As I said, I'm going to record it. So, order of business tonight is presentations. And then we will talk a little about the way the endocrine system works, a little about thyroid issues. If we have time, I would like to say a few words about diabetes, but I think there's someone in the room who probably knows more about it than I do. So I may lean on her a little.
Well, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say too, though.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully we will.
I'm gonna be here Wednesday.
Yeah, I know. Wednesday is going to be final, and the final.
I'd much rather be here than. Just so you know.
That I can understand 100%. The final will come in, and if Perla is able to show up on Wednesday and wants to do a presentation, we'll do that. But the final is 75 questions. You can do it online, and we'll go from there, and just worry about the final on Wednesday night. Okay, so who wants to go first with presentations? We've got zombie presentation. We've got. You want to go first? Okay.
No, I don't want to go first. I want to do it.
All right. Why don't you do the zombie one first? That's a great presentation anyway. Yeah, and you're going to give me a copy as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Good.
Are we reading our own part?
I would suggest you do. Yes.
Marked out. It's in order. I have 5 and 6, right? Okay, it's marked underneath yours. Yeah. Oh. Mike.
Thank you. Yeah, I can.
I don't know why I need many copies, but all right.
Killed a couple extra trees yourself, did you?
Yes, I did. But no, I want to print out my brochure. So
All right, how do you want to do this?
What are we doing?
Yeah, stand up. I'll go be the audience. That way I can sit there and make faces.
A pencil that is killing our trees also. Sure. Unless it's a plastic one. I don't like plastic pencils. I break them. Plastic trees. I can't really form a pencil. They all die. They all die. No, the number of times I've been doing this, and then all of a sudden snaps the plastic pencils. Horrible. I write so hard with the ones that I bend them and they eventually.
All right.
Who's first? I'm your presentation. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to read papers. That's it.
Well, let me give you a little advice on presentations. Remember, you're the expert. You wrote it.
No,
There you are.
no.
You wrote it. You know what you wrote. You are the expert on what you wrote. Okay. So if you want to just read it, that's fine. But you will have to do presentations when you're on the job. You will find that there will be in-services and other things that you'll be expected to do.
Yeah.
So get used to it. As well get used to it when the audience is relatively benign.
I feel sad. I wonder why. I don't think. Okay, so basically what I found was that it's called Haitian exotic.
zombies and they like bury them. Just it differs by region of where they found it as far as the ingredients go, but they do have some ingredients in common, no matter where they come from. And this quote says, one or more species of pufferfish, which often contain a deadly neurotoxin called tetrodotoxin. I can't say that. Marine toad, which produces numerous toxic substances. A hyla tree frog, which secretes an irritating but not deadly substance in human remains. And there's no real way to tell what part caused what because there's so much in the mixture. It's really gross. And it changes so rapidly each time there's a sample taken of it, which means there's no like real, I guess, recipe that everybody follows for. They're just kind of like, oh, here, this will make you die.
So you won't find it in the USP, right? You won't find it in the USP,
I
right?
hope not.
Might have once.
And I found out that it's usually applied topically and it creates a rash like thing with cracks and breaks in the skin. Tetrodotoxin is thought to be the main culprit of the zombie-like symptoms or paralyzed. Voodoo, more popularly known as voodoo, is worldwide. The official religion of Benin since 1992.
Yeah, Benin's a West African country.
I did say it right. That's what I was looking for. Voodoo is the main religion in Haiti, and zombies are an integral part of the practices. The Haitian zombie powder has been considered mostly myth until recent investigation into practice and the causes. Originally, it was claimed that a Borup or Borup, a voodoo magic man, was able to find the body of someone recently deceased by unnatural means to themselves as slaves. It is also said that if a Borup is strong enough, they can impact the souls of the living and force them to do their bidding. It's pretty. Did I not put this together? No, I did. I just must have heard. A woman named Zora Neale Hurston discovered that it was not black magic or spellwork. She learned it was pharmaceutical in nature, and so began the search to find the toxins responsible for the zombie-like state of the entrapped souls. It was actually a researcher named Wade Davis that discovered what the mixture contained after hearing the story of a man who had been turned into a zombie by his brothers, but was freed when the Borup died. He learned that while each voodoo man made their zombie powder differently, all of them had ingredients in common. Pufferfish was used for the tetrodotoxin. Tetrodotoxin, which is a powerful neurotoxin. The marine toad, which is used for the many toxins that they produce on their skin. Hyla tree frogs are used for the irritating substance they secrete, and human remains, though the properties of this is not known. The initial poison was used to put the victim in the death-like state and make them vulnerable to the drug that was given to them once they woke up. The second part of the zombie powder is called Dixon's weed, or the zombie cucumber. I don't know why it's a cucumber, but
Maybe it looks like it.
I have no idea, but it's an amusing name for it, which is a powerful psychotropic that keeps the victim delirious and like. Stop it.
Fiction zombie powder, when it's skin, will make the person feel nauseated and then there was pins and needle sensations.
Yeah, no, I like it
The victim becomes paralyzed,
somewhat.
and then the lips go blue. And the time spent 6 hours minimum. The victim's metabolism is slow and in certain circumstances, and in other circumstances, we also have a case of coughing as well.
That's scary.
So none of us are going to Haiti.
Just don't.
Not today.
You're all dying. You're like passing out, trying to hold your breath. Like,
Not today.
how much is needed to cause the zombie effect? Tetrodotoxin. Tetrodotoxin is a powerful neurotoxin that can kill an adult human at a dosage of as little as 2 milligrams in the body. Tetrodotoxin blocks sodium channels that enables nerves to fire. It says, how long does this effect last? The victim, even though is completely paralyzed, may be conscious and in some cases completely lucid until shortly before death, within 4 to 6 hours, but in the range of 20 minutes to 8 hours. Some even enter a coma. The patient survives 24 hours. The recovery normally takes without residual effects. Well, after like a few days.
So a man named Marcel here revealed an antidote for the zombie poison that includes the leaves of the aloe vera plant and gouache wood, and then several other native plants. These components are both used for treatment of other illnesses and symptoms as well. The extract of the aloe leaf has been used for snake bites, and gouache wood has been used for centuries as an anti-inflammatory and an antimicrobial by tribes in various parts of the world. The antidote is given as a potion orally to the victim of the zombie potion.
Was there any indication of when this was developed?
No, it was actually very vague on the antidote. It only listed the two.
Well, it's probably a secret formula,
Probably.
or it's some mess that is very difficult to duplicate.
Yeah. Well, and from all the other readings that I did, I found that usually the person that was a zombie, the effects wore off of them rather than them being given an antidote.
Or they die.
Or they died.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the ones who did recover from the zombie, like usually it was the person that had infected them was dead and they just recovered.
So you think the recovery was because the person that enchanted them wasn't re-enchanting them on a regular basis? If
Yeah.
they're going to recover, that would seem to be something that would be.
Well, and that was part of the citizens weed is that it's dosed regularly to the person. So once that wears off, there's no telling what that should do to them. Yeah. Zombie cucumber. I just enjoyed saying it. Zombie cucumber.
I'm curious what that looks like. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, you have to.
I was just
What?
okay. Now I'm just like getting this mental image of all these fruits and vegetables. This is find like.
Yes,
what
there
the-
are
for me,
some
the
images
vegetables,
that come to mind.
but I got them.
Well, carrots were already taken by the nuclear. So that's why it can't be a carrot, a zombie carrot. They're already taken.
Well, the cucumber probably. Talking to
Yeah, probably it's probably because it has some resemblance to a cucumber.
Probably.
Yeah.
Zombie.
Interesting. So, what surprising things did you learn from this?
Well,
That
people
this
are
isn't-
jerks, as always, with a lot of
Well, that's
things.
no surprise. I mean,
That this is Louisiana media.
Yeah.
And thank God it's not practiced here.
Well, I was hearing about the voodoo zombies since I was a little kid. But it was always like, they always made it sound like they were here in the US, happening in Louisiana. The voodoo central in the US. And it's like, to find out that it's mostly practiced in Haiti is completely different mindset.
Yeah. There are, when Hollywood discovered zombies, it was just, we're going to put them. And Haiti's just too exotic. Lots of people go to New Orleans.
Yeah.
And of course, when you're in New Orleans, especially at Mardi Gras, it's filled with zombies anyway.
In the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
There's
really.
not much else in some cases.
Yeah.
I say or that.
Or the other.
Yeah, voodoo itself does.
Yeah, but and the zombies actually be tried for murder. Like even if the person comes back to life, if they just been buried, you get tried for murder.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just don't date anyone out there if you do go out there to visit. That's my
I'm
advice.
about to get targets first.
You would have to be the one to administer poison.
You don't
But
want
you could
you don't
be-
want to be a victim.
No, I am not about to become a zombie. That's not today. Not ever. Ever.
I'm already.
That'll be lovely.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you. Thank you all. I enjoyed your presentation.
Major component.
Yeah, it made me realize a couple of things, and that we need to have perhaps a little more coaching on how to pronounce some of these words that you run into in medicine, especially drug names, which can be a challenge.
Well, I feel like MedTerm focuses so much on getting us familiar with the anatomy
Yep.
that it fails us in a lot of other areas.
Yeah.
It fails, but we just don't have as much time on MedTerm as we should probably.
Well, probably not. But I'm thinking that there are just lots of terms that you run into that, when we're talking about neurotransmitters, acetylcholine, cholinesterase inhibitors, these sorts of things trip people up a lot if they're not used to them, if they don't, if they haven't spoken the language half their lives, like people like me.
You were also.
Yeah, that has helped for sure. That has helped for sure. Okay, well, very good. Now, next. Okay. We don't have the capacity to do that. It's one of my dissatisfactions with being put into here for a full class. What we'll do is I'll turn out the lights and we'll sort of, you can display it and we'll just all look on your screen, each of you in those cases. We'll do that. I'll just make it a lot easier, I think.
Supposed to be double-sided, but for sure that you open it up and breathe, but yeah.
Come on, turn on, baby.
There's somebody else, or there's an extra one. Why? Okay. Trying to figure out how to do this so I want to see it. So this is my drug class presentation on anti-Parkinson agents. Yeah, would you do something on that one?
No, I was gonna try and get it. Oh, there it is. Up to a full slideshow. There you go.
Ah, there we go, easier to see. For people that don't know what Parkinson's disease is, it is a progressive and degenerative brain disorder. Parkinson's affects an individual's muscle movement. Generally, Parkinson's affects individuals over age 60, with men at higher risk. As the disease progresses, brain cells die and cause the brain to produce less dopamine, a chemical vital to transmitting messages to the part of the brain responsible for movement. With insufficient dopamine levels, physical movements become slower and the symptoms of Parkinson's disease become more pronounced. Just have to click. And because there is no cure, the symptoms of the disease are treated with therapy and medications that mimic or increase dopamine levels. What is anti-Parkinson medication? It is a type of drug which intends to treat and relieve the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. Also, to give a better quality of life and activities of daily living, even if there isn't a cure for Parkinson's. I put that in the last slide. Anti means against. Parkinson's is Parkinson's disease. Against Parkinson's disease is what it all stands for together. Anti-Parkinson's disease aims to release dopamine either by drugs that releases dopamine or ones that mimic dopamine. Parkinson's disease is a degenerative disorder of movement caused by dopamine deficiency in the basal ganglia. As you know, Michael J. Fox got it. He has his own foundation, research on Parkinson's research. ACE, I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Acetylcholine.
ACE, acetylcholine. Acetylcholine. And okay, antagonist, I can't talk today. Antagonist agents plus the muscarinic. Gosh, I can't get through this. ACE,
Muscarinic
acetylcholine receptors and cholinergic nerve activity. It also is less effective Parkinson agents than the dopamine agents are. The AIM is names of chemical substances. Major side effects are severe hallucinations, severe drowsiness, difficulty urinating, delirium, corneal swelling, and corneal clouding. Examples of drug classes of the clothing.
Acetyl.
And gosh, and Gauldis agents. I can't talk.
Exactly.
Trade names is Axon, wheat melt, Benadryl children's, Benadryl allergy, Allermax, Terramec, thin strips cough, and Raynaud's and Demeril. The generic names is all the histamines that for the trade names that are right next to it. Oops. Come on here. Not one next. There we go. Dope, Dopaminergic,
Dopaminergic.
dopaminergic, antiparkinsonism agents aim to replace dopamine or prevent the degeneration of dopamine. Aims to release dopamine in the central nervous system, either releases dopamine or mimics the action. I've said that 3 times now. It works by improving the pumping strength to the heart and kidneys. There's like 2 different classes, drug classes. That's why it's like being on some of it.
Right.
Just seems like the same thing. The dopaminergic, I say that right?
Dopaminergic.
Dopaminergic. Antiparkinsonism agents. Major side effects is vomiting, hallucinations, cognitive or autonomic symptoms, shortness of breath, fast and slow counting of heartbeats. The examples of the drug classes for the dopaminergic.
Dopaminergic.
I can't get that. Anti-Parkinsonism agents is trade names is Clozapine, Mirapex ER, Dompnex, Sam, Neuropro, I'm not sure how to say the A one. Azlec and Comtan. The generic names is Bromocritin, Pyrexol, Tabragoine, Selagine, Solageline, Rogolatine, Rascoline, and Carbidopa nodopa.
Yeah, carbidopa levodopa. You can see from how hard the generic names are why companies like hard generic names and easy trade names. Because the trade names are much easier to sell, you're more likely to sell a bit more drug. That used to be the model. It no longer works because the insurance companies caught on to it. But it is a way to keep the name of the drug in public. To use a very simple trade name and as hard as you can manage generic name. Okay.
Counseling points for the patient is as for any drug or herbal substances, especially patients over the age of 50 would or should not mix alcohol with the over-counter products with aspirin, sleeping pills, alcohol, cold and allergy medicine, pain medication, anxiety or depression medication. It could cause you to get sick and even die from the mixes together.
It's not too cool.
No. I'm hitting the wrong button. Acetylcholine treats these conditions, diseases, and symptoms. It is an antihistamine used to relieve symptoms of allergies, rash, itchy, watery eyes, itchy eyes, nose and sneezing, hay fever, and common cold. It prevents and treats nausea, vomiting, and dizziness. by motion sickness. It can also help you relax and fall asleep.
Dopaminergic.
Dopaminergic, anti-Parkinsonism agents treat these symptoms, diseases, and conditions. And levodopa treats Parkinson's disease by relieving muscle stiffness, lung infections, GERD, breathing problems, and constipation. Dopaminergic. Dopaminergic. Can't say those. I have problems talking, so it's even worse when I have medical going on. Anti-Parkinsonism agents treat these symptoms and diseases and conditions. The cycloset treats, improves blood sugars in type 2 diabetes, helps with weight loss, helps nerve cells to communicate to each other, controls diabetes from having heart attacks and strokes, and only use these medications with diet control and exercise. And all these drug classes, are included with the Parkinson's disease. Also, Aramex ER treats Parkinson's disease with stiffness, tumors, muscle spasms, poor muscle control. Amisam treats major depressive disorder. Upro and Azilic. I was going to say that and I didn't think it was right. To be used alone or with other medications to treat Parkinson's disease. It improves ability to move and decrease shakiness and tremors, stiffness, and slow movement, of course, and unsteadiness. Doxnex to treat high levels of prolactin hormone in your body, menstrual problems, fertility problems in men and women, fertility, I have it in my brain, I can't say it. Fertility, I can't say it. Programs, problems, treat tumors of the pituitary, I can't say that word, gland, pituitary, I can't say that one.
Think of spitting.
Pituitary gland. Comtan is used in combination with carbidopa and levodopa to treat the wear-off symptoms of Parkinson's disease. The ADME aspects of the anti-Parkinson agents is half-lives of 10 to 18 hours to be given twice a day, eliminated from the body through renal secretion of unchanged drug. It is amino acid that follows the metabolic pathways and completes for absorption and brain uptake with large number of neutral amino acids. Normal decline in elderly patients' renal function is an important factor in avoiding potential drug toxicity. I can't talk today. Toxicity.
Works.
And that was my pressure.
Right. Okay, questions for Charity?
Besides not talking, right? I have problems talking as is, so this makes it worse for me.
And a lot of it's just practice with the words. Teaching your tongue how to move when you're talking, say that, make the sounds.
And hearing it more often.
Yeah, you need to hear it more often. And you need to practice. I mean, that's another part. I think I'm going to be talking with Chantel the other medical instructors about what we can do to help people do a better job of pronouncing things, because you're going to have to on the job.
Oh, yeah.
My older sister, a PA, she just graduated PA school last year. And the way she told me to help with it is think about learning to speak in an accent.
That's
And it's helped a lot,
yeah,
actually.
good. Well, that's good advice, actually, yeah. Because it changes the way you make sounds. And that's, in actuality, when you are in an acting class, when they teach accents there, they teach you where to place your tongue, because that's what does the most for making accents. And so it's when you learn that, you can make a lot of different accents. You know, with practice, they become accurate, which is why some actors can speak, you know, absolutely perfect Midwestern American English, and then you hear them talking on an interview, and they're from Australia.
Hugh Jackman.
Well, and Nicole
Famous
Kidman.
for that nonsense.
Yeah. And when you hear Meryl Streep playing Maggie Thatcher,
Oh,
she
yeah.
sounded like Maggie Thatcher.
Yeah.
But as Sigourney Weaver, Streep and Weaver went to Yale together. And she said Weaver said it was very intimidating to be in class with Meryl Streep, because she did everything better than anyone else. So, anyway.
That's something that new actors are using, though, is their ability to do
Well,
or acting.
they,
Well,
they're-
honestly, I'm trying
Well
not to be
said.
that harsh on them, but yes.
Well
They're
said,
not very
some of
good
them
at
can back their way out of the wet sack facing the open. Okay, who's next?
Let Emily have a cigarette before she has to talk
All right.
to us. I do.
That's what's so great about this class is you get yourself done pretty quick. This class is so small.
Yeah.
So, my drug class was the anti-asthmatic class. So anti-asthmatics, anti meaning against, asthma is an inflammation that causes narrowed airways. So an asthmatic is a person with asthma. So anti-asthmatics are for the treatment of the causes of asthma, such as bronchospasms, inflammations, mucus buildup, and allergen irritants. There are a few different types of anti-asthmatics. We have bronchodilators, which are beta-2 and what's the right word?
Adrenergic.
Adrenergics.
Adrenergic.
Adrenergic. Okay. Corticosteroids, leukotriene modifiers, leukotriene modifiers, and antihistamines. Anti-asthmatics are prescribed for people who have asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD for the rest of us, walking pneumonia, recovering from pneumonia, chronic bronchitis, emphysema, and other respiratory diseases. Treatments for these illnesses are often combinations of different anti-asthmatics, bronchodilators to open constricted airways, anti-inflammatories to help with the inflammation that can cause or be caused by the constriction, leukotriene modifiers to break up the excess mucus that is produced because of inflammation and constriction, and then antihistamines to prevent bronchoconstriction and inflammation caused by allergens. Bronchodilators are usually given in inhalers or nebulizers. The Turals, more commonly known as albuterol, activate the processes in the smooth muscles around the lungs that create protein kinase A, and that causes the muscles, to relax, which then opens up the airways. Inhalers can be used to prevent bronchospasms by being taken 15 to 30 minutes before exercise or going outdoors during allergy season. There are a lot of different types of bronchodilators. The most common are salmeterol or Severant, formoterol, albuterol, levobuterol, ipratropium. Yes, I forgot the bromide part on there. And then theophylline. Bronchodilators can cause tremors, headaches, nausea, throat irritation, dizziness, insomnia, anxiety, and diarrhea. These effects usually only last for about the first month that you're taking them before they start to fade away as your body gets used to the medication. Corticosteroids can be taken orally as tablets or capsules through an inhaler or a nebulizer. These are anti-inflammatory medicines that combine with the steroid receptors in a cell's cytoplasm and control the synthesis of proteins that regulate cell activities, including inflammation. It's best for a patient to rinse and spit with water to prevent the bad taste in the mouth and GI absorption from inhalers and nebulizers. It hasn't been proven through studies, but it's been showing up that corticosteroids can cause a positive drug test. But if a deeper test is done, it's usually found out that it's a corticosteroid instead of, I think it's methamphetamine. Food can also inhibit absorption of oral corticosteroids, so they need to be taken without food. The inhalers and nebulizers are Flovent, Pulmicort, the Asmanex twist inhaler, Qvar, Alvesco, and Aerospan HFA. The oral tablets are prednisone and methylprednisolone. So you may be prescribed one or both of these types of corticosteroids, depending on how bad your respiratory problems are. Bronchodilator and corticosteroid combinations, these are typically inhalers, and they're both drugs together. You get the Advair Discus, Symbicort, Dulera, and Brio, which are just different combinations of the different bronchodilators and corticosteroids. Corticosteroids have a lot more side effects: increased appetite, weight gain, mood swings, muscle weakness, blurred vision, increased body hair growth, easy bruising, low immune response, swollen face, acne, osteoporosis, worsening of diabetes, high blood pressure, stomach irritation, nervousness, insomnia, glaucoma, and water retention. I did learn that most of these are caused by the oral medication and less by the inhalant. But the mood swing, muscle weakness, and blurred vision can still be caused by the inhalers and nebulizers. The leukotriene modifiers, these are oral tablets or capsules. They prevent leukotrienes from having inflammatory responses to irritants.
which stops the smooth muscles from tightening the airways and from producing excess mucus and fluid from building in the bronchioles. It should be noted that these medications have to build in your system. It can take 3 days to 2 weeks for them to take full effect. Types of leukotriene modifiers are Mucolast or Singulair, Zafirlocast. I got it. And Xyloton. These can give you flu-like symptoms. They can make you nervous or easily excitable. You can get a headache. Nausea and vomiting are actually the most common with these. And then also nasal congestion.
Makes me tired, the Mucolast.
It makes me bounce off the front walls.
Makes me
I can't
tired.
sit still. And then there are antihistamines. These can be taken as tablets or capsules. They can also be given as injections. Antihistamines are given to patients with allergy reactive asthma. Most asthmatics actually suffer from this type of asthma. Antihistamine reverses the effects of inflammatory responses from irritants, which prevents smooth muscles from contracting and keeps the airways open. Funny, they all seem to do that. These usually end with mine. These are taken once a day orally, usually the capsules and tablets. So they should be taken at bedtime to prevent daytime drowsiness. This is a side effect that doesn't seem to go away no matter how long you're on the medication. Nasal spray antihistamines are faster acting, but have a shorter half-life than their tablet or capsule counterparts, so they're not usually prescribed. Xolair is a very popular type of antihistamine prescribed for asthma and COPD. Allergy shots and over-the-counter allergy medications are very common as well. Side effects are dry mouth, drowsiness, dizziness, nausea and vomiting, restlessness, moodiness, dysuria, blurred vision, and confusion. The allergy shots have been known to cause more severe side effects than the medications. Thank you. That was so cute.
Thank
I
you.
read it.
Any comments? Complicated disease. Many causes.
Every time Joey.
Yeah, some people are really wired by those things.
Right.
And the antihistamines, most people find sedation, but if my wife takes Benadryl, she gets wired. Yeah.
Unless I take, like, it was last year sometime, probably closer to March, because I was helping Heather with this move. I got stung 6 or 7 times
Oh,
by bees. I'm highly allergic to bees, so they just gave me Benadryl. Well, I don't have the money to go to the hospital, so no, I can go to the hospital.
yeah.
And my EpiPen is nowhere to be found. So, yeah.
All right, let's take that. 15 minutes.
Some of the side effects on a lot of drugs makes it so you don't want to take it.
I know. Well, and like what I was discovering with the antihistamine, well, pretty much all of those, is that there's such a low percentage of people that end up having those side effects. Yeah. But
out
the
there
problem
to take.
is that, well, but the thing I've noticed is like it's the people that need it more that tend to have most side effects. Like the antihistamines, I take Claritin during the very first part of spring, where everything is like, hello, because it kills me. But after that first week, I don't need it
Bipolar disorder.
I can do
sometimes.
it.
Yeah.
It's a lot more complicated. Generally, schizophrenia was generally than
Supposedly my dad has both.
And what it has is a complex disease that probably falls into that spectrum of CNS disorder. Because it really is a spectrum.
Yeah.
And you know, you get people with depression and anxiety, mild, or going through to almost catatonic with the disease. And schizophrenia and other types of psychosis, again, have a broad range to them. Ranging from again, functional and mild to afunctional and relatively mild. We have a friend down in West Center, one of the family members, just one day he'd gone to school. Schizophrenia usually hits men in their early 20s, late teens.
Late teens or 20s. Very
And
rarely into the 30s.
yeah, usually though, it's going to be something that happens about that time of life. And he was coming home from, he was a brilliant student. He was coming home from school one day and never showed up. So they started looking for him and they found him. He'd gone into this psychotic schizophrenic episode, and it's now probably must be his 20s, so probably 45 years later. And he's you know, you talk with him, if he has some drug side effects. It looks like he has Parkinson's, and I think that's his drug. And he's quiet, doesn't say much, has a wicked sense of humor. But he will not participate. He can read, he can do a lot of things. He will sit in a group quietly and say nothing. And he's been that way on total for at least 45 years. He's at least 65. He's probably the reason his mother's still alive at 90 now. He's taking care of him.
She's probably terrified to let somebody
Yeah, that would be her.
That would be her.
But yeah, I mean, you know, it's that range, and I've seen others that were literally reading, you know, psychotic behavior of the kind of reading lunatic. That's psychotic.
My mom's mom, I've heard of this story that so she has bipolar type 1. She was in a really big manic episode, and she almost ran my mom's dad over with a car before. And then presumably tried to kill herself by going into the garage, shutting it, and trying to go to sleep with the car on.
Yeah.
Like that. That's the extreme.
Yeah.
As a bipolar.
Yeah.
My cousin actually has a mild form of schizophrenia. She's an older cousin. She has a much milder form, but when it first struck, she was the raving lunatic. She would stand in the middle of the street and scream about God knows what at this point. Most of the time you couldn't understand her when she was screaming. And then when they finally got her under control, we discovered that her dad, who was in prison, so none of us had ever heard from him. We discovered from the prison that, oh yeah, we diagnosed him with schizophrenia when he came in. And you didn't think to tell any of the family members?
No obligation.
No.
No obligation.
Yeah. It was just like one of those moments of she just suddenly started having these episodes, and it's like, we don't have anybody in the family who has this. What is going on? And I mean, it's not
And you
all
might not.
genetic, but
Yeah, no, but the problem is fine. Actually, recently when I'm in the car, I was listening to TV, because radio, and I was listening to a book about the human genome, and it was really, I can't remember the exact title at the moment, but it's a relatively recent book, and it was written by an MD geneticist, and he has a family full of mental disorders, ranging from depression to full-blown psychosis. And he talks about the fact that there's no gene identified, but it falls in families. So it's something that can be passed from generation to generation, but why doesn't it manifest itself in everyone?
Yeah.
And the reason, of course, is the beautiful diversity of the human genetic structure. But still, we see this, and you wonder why in one family, you're going to see generation after generation after generation of problems, and another family, ostensibly no really different. None of those problems.
Well, and so that's like my family yet again. We have the two that both have schizophrenia, but then we have the rest of us. And I was diagnosed with teenage depression, which I think every teenager has that. So I don't know why it's a diagnosis, but apparently it is.
I'm pretty sure.
But my current doctors are like, I have no idea what this depression they speak of because I don't have depressive episodes. But we have a mild history of it in the family, and then my mom has bipolarism, but other than that, we've had no.
Yeah, families have their secrets. In our family, the Scourge.
Should meet my mother.
3 of my mother's brothers. She had 4 brothers. 3 of them were alcoholics. Her sisters didn't seem to have that problem. One sister was kind of loopy. But she was the baby of the family, and I think she was raised.
That's not a bad assumption.
But that's there. And there's just things do follow in families. And every family has somebody who has something. I mean, diabetes is not a major problem in our family, as my sister mentioned before. Probably had gestational diabetes, and that somewhere in the range of 5% of women will have gestational diabetes, but they have a 30% chance increase turning into type 2 diabetes about 20 years later. That's exactly what happened. But no one else in the family has diabetes. So in her case, what was it? Lifestyle? I mean,
His lifestyle sometimes.
yeah. So we don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it's just, I mean, it's the big curiosity in my family because we have such strong genetics that you look at the generations and all the way back to my great-great-grandmother, we all look from childhood into adulthood very similar to each other. The whole, oh, you could be twins sort of thing.
Yeah.
And with those kind of genetics, we all just kind of sit here and go, okay, why is it that these ones have all these problems, but then there's these ones that have no problems?
Yeah.
I mean, I was
And well, but see, that's the thing is that we were all born towhead blonde with bright blue eyes, pale skin, the whole 9 yards. But you look at my 2 older cousins, and they both have problems with drugs and alcohol. And so long as I have my coffee, I'm good. You take my coffee away, we might start having problems, but
Yeah, you're right. In my, if you look at childhood pictures of my mother-in-law, my wife, and our younger daughter, you think they were tripping. I mean, it's just amazing. The only reason you can tell the difference is that our daughter's picture is in color, and my wife's picture at that age, and my mother-in-law's picture are not. And they look old, just from the style of the photo. But they could be twins or
Yeah.
triplets.
well, and I have a
There's
picture.
what, my mother-in-law is 98, and my older daughter is now 30.
Mhm.
So, in that range.
Yeah. Well, and like I have a picture of my aunt and Madison, the oldest of Melody's daughters, found it. And she went, Auntie, I've never seen you with this jacket before. I'm like, jacket? What jacket? And I look at the picture and I'm like, oh, honey, that's not me. That's my aunt. And she sits there.
Well,
No, that's you.
my nephew is the only, the only boy found in that generation. When he was born, it was like looking at my baby. He looked exactly like me. I guarantee you his father looks nothing like me. So I had to come through his mother.
Yeah.
So, and she resembled me. But just looking at Adam, you think that
Yeah.
he's not. No way. Okay, Emily, it's your turn. Gotta get out of here.
I mean, I could.
Yeah, you can take 0. You don't want to do that. No, you don't. We don't see what's next.
Oh, come on, sass us about it. What did you pick? Okay, that's not really a drug you can sass us about, but you can try.
You got this.
You can mock me about it.
So, sooner or later, why don't
You want me to move? What's with you?
Well, my nephew refused to get off the couch today, so I just moved the couch, and after moving it, he's sitting there holding on to it like this. And he looks at me and he went, don't do that again. And Mel just looks at him and goes, can you get off the couch next time?
It was around you.
It sounds like
It is.
all right.
Is a rainbow.
Okay.
Take everything out of to make my stuff in. And take like 6 hours to make it. Because no. Okay, so I did anti-Alzheimer's drugs. The drug class is, oh, what is it? Cholinesterase.
Cholinesterase.
Medications called cholinesterase inhibitors may help reduce some symptoms and help control some behavioral problems. There's no like guarantee of either. It's just like, hey, this might work. And the world leading again. Alzheimer's is a degenerative memory disease, and anti-Alzheimer's means to fight Alzheimer's. And the main recognition for the drug is the suffix stigmine, which well, that's not, which relates to acetylcholinesterase. Yeah, that thing. Inhibitors.
None of us have any luck with that word.
So some of the drug, I can't use my face. Some of the drug examples are donepezil, which is Aricept, galantamine, which is Bazodine. I kept saying it over and over in my head while I was writing this. Memantine is Namenda. Rivastigmine is Exelon, and memantine plus
One syllable.
I just can't get the right syllable out of my mouth. I keep wanting to say M instead of N. There's donepezil, which is Manzarek.
Mhm.
And there's actually no overlapping classes for anti-Alzheimer's drugs that I could find, at least.
Right.
I dug through the internet and there was just like, no, this is better.
Yeah, that was my issue that I was having with doing that.
But the class that I could find was called cognition and medication. Some of the conditions treated besides Alzheimer's include dementia, Parkinson's, and in some severe cases like horrible car accidents or traumatic brain injuries. And then side effects are pretty typical with 99%. Nausea, vomiting, loss of appetite, increased frequency of bowel movements, headaches, constipation, and confusion and dizziness, which
Every drug ever has those side effects.
pretty much it.
Yeah, because apparently it's not a drug if it doesn't cause nausea and vomiting.
And then AbbVie, the half-life of the three main drugs that are used. So donepezil is the half-life is 70 hours. Rivastigmine is 1 to 2 hours, and galantamine is 6 hours. There's a low risk of buildup in rivastigmine. Gosh, that's it. That was supposed to run out. System, even with prolonged treatment.
So horrible.
I told you my brain is around today. I haven't had nearly enough caffeine. Hey, don't ask. I don't know. I don't know anything anymore.
Okay.
And fair point. Contraindications are severe liver disease, pre-existing bradycardia, peptic ulcer disease, current alcoholism. Asthma and COPD. I really don't think that's what it is.
Probably not, but come on now. Poor Mike. He's so
No,
disappointed.
just thinking, thinking of- Go ahead. Yeah. That's it? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Alzheimer's, of course, cannot be diagnosed except at autopsy. So when someone says this person has Alzheimer's, they're talking about, they're taking a guess, because there are many forms of dementia.
There's so many
Yeah, and
things that look like other things, and they're not those things.
yeah. With Alzheimer's, the dementias are kind of scary and heartbreaking, especially when people start really misbehaving. We had this sort of an interesting confluence here. Charity was talking about anti-Parkinson's drugs. You're talking about anti-Alzheimer's drugs. There is a disease that comprises them both. And I think I mentioned this before, Lewy body disease. It's the worst of all worlds as far as things go, because neither Parkinson's nor Alzheimer's are particularly fatal in the short term. You know, you can live a long time with both. But with Alzheimer's, I mean, with Lewy body, it's about a 7-year process from diagnosis to death. And that's real consistent. There are no treatments. Symptomatic, yes, you can give people anti-Parkinson's drugs and it'll help a little with the Parkinson's side. You can give them these cognitive enhancers or cognitive accelerators or whatever it is you want to call them, that we try to use to prevent or reverse the effects of Alzheimer's. They don't work. They may have some minor effect, but they don't work. We don't have a clue what causes Alzheimer's. Lots of research. Pardon? But there's, prions are usually associated with fungiform disease, and we don't see that in the brain. It could be some sort of weird thing like that, but we know that pathologically it's associated with these tangles of substances within the brain and these protein deposits, amyloid plaque, and so forth. But that's about as much as we know. We have an awful lot of information and very little really useful information about how to either reverse, prevent, or at least treat the symptoms of the disease. And it's very hard. I'm watching several people go through it with their parents now. We feel blessed. My mother-in-law's dementia is more, at 98, she's forgotten more than probably we know. She's got a long life and a lot of things are forgotten, but she doesn't remember things that she used to talk about extensively. And that's kind of difficult to deal with at times. But there's none of the usual dementia stuff. She still knows who we are and knows who her grandchildren are, and recognizes the friends that come to the door. So it's not there. And why do some people get dementia and some don't? I haven't a clue. Maybe there's any of that.
See my grandma moments where she didn't know who we were. Like we were still family members, but I was often mistaken for my mother or my aunt.
Yeah.
My younger cousins, it's the same thing. The only person that she never got confused was my daughter, Mila. She always knew who Mila was. But the rest of us, Hyla? She talking to me or you? Which one? I don't know. We'll wait until she screams and then we'll both start walking towards her and see whose other name she says. Like that's the point we had gotten to where it's like we'll just both walk towards her and eventually she'll say a name that we can call.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult for families to deal with. And unfortunately, it sometimes leads to abuse and other things. That, when someone is confused and demented, abuse doesn't help them. But it's really frustrating to deal with.
Well, in our family, we all know that.
Yeah.
It was no surprise to any of us when we started getting called by their names. So our thing was mostly just, who is she yelling at? Like, is she actually yelling at the person she's talking to?
Who knows?
Or is it one of us?
Yeah.
Well, and for me and my younger cousins, because we all look extremely, sometimes two of us are Hyla or two of us are Sky.
Okay. I gave you some handouts. You're going to end up having to go over them and the associated there's some PowerPoints that go along with them too. You need to go through those when you're getting ready for the final. I did want to talk a little about the endocrine system. The endocrine system is a series of glands in the body, organs, that secrete hormones. And hormones are a wide range of molecules that control cellular and tissue processes and control the function of organs. The kinds of molecules that are hormones range from peptides like insulin, which is a peptide, to corticosteroid-like molecules, the sex hormones, androsterone, testosterone, etc. Molecules that look a lot like prostaglandins, which are long, fatty kinds of molecules that control various functions, to things that are fairly routine from the standpoint of a chemist, chemicals in the body. So they're not special. What they do is special, however, because they control bodily processes. And they're controlled in return by a complex feedback process, so that things don't get out of whack. Now, do they get out of whack? Sure they do. We see that happening. You can produce too much or too little of a hormone, and doesn't matter what hormone it is, or you can produce none of it. But the organs that are involved include the hypothalamus, the pineal body, the pituitary, the thyroids and parathyroids, the adrenals, the ovaries and testes. The pancreas has an endocrine function as well as a digestive function. The organs that secrete hormones are not organs that have ducts. And a duct in an organ is an opening through which something is moved to get it out. The gallbladder is a ducted organ. And what happens is it squirts bile into the digestive system. The pancreas, part of the pancreas, is a ducted organ that secretes pancreatic enzymes into the digestive system. And part of it is a non-ducted form. The islet cells that secrete both insulin and glucagon. The feedback occurs when these hormones are secreted. What happens, for instance, in the thyroid secretes thyroxine, which is a metabolic protein. It controls our metabolism, controls our temperature, controls a huge variety of different functions within the body. But the thyroid doesn't just sit there and pump out thyroxine. What happens is the hypothalamus secretes when thyroxine is needed. The hypothalamus secretes threonine stimulating hormone, or no, threonine releasing hormone, or thyronine releasing hormone. I'm sorry, threonine is a totally different molecule. Yeah, it's caught. Yeah, right. It's late. I've had a long day. But it releases known as TRH, thyrosine releasing hormone. That stimulates the pituitary to release thyroxine stimulating hormone, TSH. So we have a releasing hormone that goes from one organ to another that stimulates the production of a stimulating hormone, which then goes to the organ of target, in this case the thyroid, and the thyroid secretes thyroxine and triiodothyronine, which is T4 and T3, which is what you see when you get a thyroid panel done. That and TSH as well, and sometimes TRH. But we have, so then the thyroid releases that. What happens then is the T4 and T3 go into the bloodstream. And the next thing that happens is that a signal then goes back to the hypothalamus that says, stop secreting TRH. So it stops. And so this way we make sure that the actual level of hormone in the blood is at a proper level. And if it's not at a proper level, then we'll stimulate more production. If it's overstimulated, then we have a problem. If it's understimulated, we have a problem. So this is all designed to have these hormones within a band of concentration, a high and low level band of concentration in the blood. The same with the adrenal hormones. They're released as well. They go to the kidney. The kidney also releases hormone-like molecules. Renin is a hormone molecule because it causes it's involved in the renin-angiotensin system. So we have these, and this complex feedback loop, when it's working properly, keeps the hormones in balance. When we talk about hormones in balance, we sometimes forget that we're talking about a huge range of different kinds of compounds that cause these different functions. And there's a lot of this physiology and anatomy of the endocrine system in this handout. We have many hormones that control growth and formation of bones. One of the first of the biotechnology products that was made when we started seeing the emergence of recombinant DNA-based products was human growth hormone. And the reason for that is it's a protein. It's one of the protein hormones. It stimulates bone growth. When people are significantly low on the growth scale, on the growth chart, we get worried about them being deficient in GRH or HGH, human growth hormone. We worry about that. And so they would be given human growth hormone. The problem was that human growth hormone was isolated from human cadaver pituitary glands, because that's where it's generated. And the secondary problem was that for a long time, we had a problem with infectious diseases like AIDS being transferred through this. So you got a kid who is very, very short, looking, long bones aren't growing. There's concern. Give them an injection of this stuff, their long bones grow, and then they come down with AIDS. And it was a major problem. It was one of the first products that was made by the Genentech company when it was formed. And they quickly sold the rights off to somebody else. But nonetheless, they developed this, made in a bioreactor without human tissue at all, and with extensive testing, and was virus-free. And therefore, today, people who need HGH do not have to worry about at least AIDS. So one of the reasons that we want to look at using artificial sources for these hormones when we're deficient is because of the risk of transmitting human or animal-borne diseases. For instance, thyroid hormone was an animal-sourced hormone. It was made from desiccated thyroids. and pigs and a couple of others. But yeah, yeah, yeah. Thyroid and hormones and insulin are what we call highly conserved factors, hormones, meaning that from animals to humans, they're exactly the same in many cases. Insulin, in fact, is used in virtually all animals, with the exception of a few species of spider and one or two other things. And that's it. For metabolism of sugar, insulin is used, and it's pretty much the same molecule all the way through, which says something about the importance of it from an evolutionary standpoint. But it used to be when we figured out that we could treat diabetes with insulin. I'll come back to diabetes in a bit, but when we figured we could treat it with insulin, we started isolating it from pigs and sheep and cattle for the most part, because we had plenty of pancreatic tissue from those animals, from the slaughterhouses. Most people don't eat pancreas. So, well, it's called sweetbreads. If you ever hear that term, somebody offers you sweetbreads, ask them exactly what they mean, because it used to mean pancreas, basically. But we used to extract these things. Pardon? Oh, sweet meat, sweet bread. Well, sweet bread. I said sweetmeats. Yeah. But anyway, also thyroid used to be basically isolated, as I said, from desiccated animal thyroid tissue. And it's still, in fact, Armour thyroid is still sold today, and that's exactly what it is. Armour, you may or may not be aware that Armour started its existence as an organization, as a meat packing company. That's what they did. They were a slaughterhouse. So they, at the beginning of the 20th century, was when the isolation of things like insulin began from pigs, mainly pigs in Denmark, because Denmark produces a prodigious amount of pork. And that was used, but pigs carry viruses that humans will get sick from. I mean, we have, swine flu we know about, but there are many others as well. So we have a lot of these hormones that we're treating hormone deficiency, if we could identify these, and they come out of animal product or human cadaver product. Obviously, human cadaver products have even greater risks because, of course, if the cadaver has a human disease, it's much more easily transferable to another human. But with the advent of early in the 20th century, when organic chemists and pharmaceutical chemists actually were able to analyze and determine the chemical structure of thyroid hormone, they realized that they could actually make it in the lab. And so was born levothyroxine, which is the one, levothyroxine, also marketed as Levothyrox and Synthroid and Levithroid and several other names, is one of the largest selling drugs in terms of numbers of prescriptions per year in the United States. It's in the top 10. Has been consistently and mostly in the top 5 for years. And the use of these is determined by examining thyroid disease. You have hypothyroid disease and hyperthyroid disease. hypothyroid disease, you have low thyroxine levels. You tend to gain weight. You tend to be lethargic. You tend to have certain kinds of diseases, like Graves' disease. You have a series of changes. It affects bone density. It affects a lot of things. Between insulin and thyroxine, many bodily processes, critical bodily processes, are regulated. With the advent of levothyroxine, and there are some people that make triiodothyronine as well, but the most prescribed drug for treating thyroid disease is levothyroxine. You also have hyperthyroid diseases. In this case, people tend to be really agitated, and they're gaunt, so skinny that they're gaunt, because they are generating so much of this metabolism boosting hormone that they burn up a lot of stuff. Treatment of these diseases, if you are hypothyroid, and what we do is we just do blood tests and we measure thyroid levels in the blood. If you're hypothyroid, they give you levothyroxine or one of the other thyroid preparations. Here in the United States, we tend to use the synthetic materials. Other parts of the world are still using some of the animal products, but those are disappearing. But the levothyroxine that's done here is all very well manufactured. It's a weird drug in one respect. There are many generic manufacturers of the drug, and when you manufacture a generic drug, what you do is you demonstrate by essentially a head-to-head you demonstrate a head-to-head comparison of the originator drug and your drug, and what you get is if the plasma levels are identical, then it's considered a generic equivalent. The problem is, for some reason, different manufacturers seem to do things just differently enough that thyroid, which has to be fairly well controlled, if you are prescribed levothyroxine, what they will tell you is, if at all possible, you should always use the drug from the same generic source, because they seem to be absorbed differently. And no one can tell me why that would be the case, because that's not normal. If the plasma levels are the same, they ought to be the same. But that's just the way that works out. So if you are looking at a hyperthyroid condition, you can have the only choice you have is to try to reduce the thyroid function. And what happens is, we have some drugs that will actually shut your thyroid down. When they do that, they have to be careful how they do it, how they shut it down, how much drug they give you. They have to also be careful that you don't then move into hypothyroid. So sometimes they will give you a drug to shut down your thyroid and then give you levothyroxine to replace it, which just seems kind of crazy to me, but what they do. Another way you can deal with the thyroid is to surgically remove all or part of it, and thus reduce the amount of thyroid hormone produced. You can also treat it with radioactive iodine. Iodine, the only place the body uses iodine is the thyroid. So if you put radioactive iodine into a patient, they will either pee it out or it'll go to the thyroid, where we can measure it. We can measure the radioactivity of the throat area. Thyroid's right here at the throat.
We can measure the radioactivity in that area and see the absorption. And what happens with radioactive iodine is at low doses it can be used for some diagnostic purposes, but at higher doses it kills the thyroid. Unfortunately, it can also induce thyroid cancer. So maybe it's not a great idea, but they do it anyway. In fact, we could measure when the Russian reactor at Chernobyl in Kiev in Ukraine blew up about 40 years ago. The radioactive plume that settled over Europe could be tracked by the increase in thyroid in a swath of Europe downwind from the reactor. So it's a risky process. There's an autoimmune form of thyroid disease called Hashimoto disease, in which the body generates antibodies to the thyroid tissue and basically ablates the thyroid. The thyroid begins to shrink as the body begins to destroy it. And again, we haven't any idea why that happens. Autoimmune diseases are still very, very poorly understood at all levels. So we watch for this disease. We measure then anti-thyroid antibodies in the blood to determine whether an initially hyperthyroid condition occurs with Hashimoto's, because the first response to this antibody is an inflammatory response. And inflammation, when the thyroid becomes inflamed, it releases more thyroxine. So with Hashimoto's, there's an initial hyperthyroid followed by a hypothyroid sequence. So thyroid disease clearly is critical, and one of those systems that we have to take action, because the long-term effects of hyper and hypothyroidism are not very good. They're not pleasant at all. So we treat that particular disease very carefully. Let's ask if there are any questions about any of that. I just want to say a few words about diabetes. The diabetes is a condition in which the body does not produce enough insulin to be able to help. What insulin does is it helps sugar, glucose, get into cells to be metabolized. And if we don't have enough insulin, what happens is we get a buildup of glucose in the blood, which then puts this sticky layer around organs and really pumps things up. The islet cells consist of alpha and beta cells. And an alpha cell releases insulin, which helps with the metabolism of sugar, and excess sugar in the presence of insulin is stored as glycogen. So we make these long carbohydrate molecules, those glycogen, for them. It also, so then when the sugar level drops low, then the beta cells secrete glucagon, which then releases glucose from glycogen. So there's a real balance there between insulin and glucagon in controlling sugar. Sugar is manufactured also in the liver and secreted, and so the body is constantly recycling this stuff. The sugar is absolutely critical to so many functions because it's the source of energy. So diabetics have problems healing a lot This is why we're worried with our diabetic patients about diabetic ulcers and sores that get out of
Walking around
control.
barefoot.
Pardon? Pardon?
Walking around barefoot.
Yep. You don't, you want to be very careful about these. Or diabetics that are bedridden develop cubitus ulcers that end up sometimes costing them limbs or large pieces of flesh because it gets necrotic and gangrenous. Another thing that people don't talk about so much is that diabetics who are not well controlled often have cognition problems because the brain is the highest energy consuming organ in the body. So it uses a heck of a lot. And so we really, diabetes is a horrible disease. There are at least 27 to 30 million diabetics in the United States, most of which, somewhere in the range of 90%, are what we call type 2 diabetics. Now, a type 1 diabetic is a diabetic who is, we used to call it insulin-dependent diabetes. Also, we used to call it juvenile onset diabetes, but I know of cases where type 1 diabetes has appeared in the early 20s. So it does not appear necessarily at birth. It's something that happens.
Got mine at 108.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember you said that. And that's a little later than a lot of people do, but it's not out of the range of normal. It's certainly on the far end of the curve. But the basic therapy for that is to supplement insulin with and diet control and a lot of other things. Diabetic has to be very careful. Diabetics should never drink alcohol, for one. They should never. They should avoid certainly simple sugars and limit complex carbohydrates as well.
So when you had a discussion, gluten-free diet.
Yeah.
It was actually one of the more medical-based pages than one of the more opinion-based
Yeah.
pages. It actually said that diabetics can benefit from a gluten-free diet. Is that because of the decrease in the complex?
Decrease in complex
Okay.
or a change. But yeah, diabetics can. They don't necessarily, but they can benefit from a reduction in glucose in gluten.
It's just like I
consumption.
went and did a little side research of looking up what an ideal diabetic diet was, and they have a lot of crossover.
Mm-hmm.
The diabetic diet didn't say anything about gluten-free this or gluten-free that.
No.
It just, it was a lot of raw fruits and vegetables, a lot of
high carbs,
meats and stuff like that.
sugars. Question.
Mhm.
What is in gluten? Is glucagon? Is it just sugar water?
It is a carbohydrate. Glucagon is a storage mechanism, and it's stored in the liver. And it's not. It's structured so that the body can take off the glucose molecule to cellulose, which is a sugar that or a complex carbohydrate that's structured so that the human body doesn't have the enzymes to take the sugar molecules off.
So if you're not coherent, diabetic's not coherent, and the ambulance is called, and they inject you with glucagon, is that sugar water or no?
It's a sugar. It is a carbohydrate solution, providing an immediate burst of.
Because I get really, really, really sick when I get the full dosage.
Yeah, you probably.
Maybe I'm just too sensitive.
Yeah, you probably are.
I get sick I don't get it anymore, but when I was younger, before I was on the insulin pump, every single time they used to inject me the full dose, I got it.
Uh-huh.
And I get really dizzy and really weak.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
That's what's happened. You were getting too much sugar. They needed to give you a much smaller dose.
Yeah, I learned that when something like that happens, they should only have half the bills.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that why
Um,
they tell people who don't, when the ambulance is taking a long time to get there? Is that why they tell anybody with a diabetic to give them like a juice of some sort or something?
juices are yeah. Juices are basically glucose in them. And you can get an immediate, you don't have to go through the step of chopping it off the carbohydrate. So you have an immediate sugar response. Little
Yeah.
candies can also help.
We had a girl with really bad diabetes. And she wasn't, I don't think it was so much her fault as it was, I don't think her doctor had ever truly explained to her how serious her disease was.
Yeah,
But she didn't take very good care of it. And she would
that's a
carry-
problem.
Yeah, and she would carry a lunchbox with juice in it around, and she ended up going into diabetic shock one time in the middle of class. And none of us knew what to do, but she kept like saying juice, 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 and we're like, what do you mean juice? And
Yeah.
then the ambulance got there and they took it away.
Yeah,
And they asked if we knew anything. We were like, she just kept saying juice. We don't know what that means. And the paramedic picks up her bag and sees the lunchbox and opens it. And
yeah,
there was juice in her lunchbox.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
there was no extra medication. There was no.
If she was an insulin dependent diabetic, other medication probably isn't going to help. Other than insulin. The other form of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, is often, at least at the beginning stages of the disease, controllable by diet. If diet doesn't work, we have drugs that actually influence the generation of sugar from glycogen and stop the liver from producing excess sugar. So you'll see people taking drugs like metformin and others. That's the go-to drug for type 1 diabetes, the initial therapy. You'll see people taking these drugs, but they still need to be careful of their diet. The problem with diabetics is they think, oh, I'll just take a pill or I'll give myself a shot. We have a distant cousin down in Salida who's type 1 diabetic, and we were down there for a wedding, and not only did he get incredibly drunk at the wedding, but the next morning he's up there eating jelly donuts. And we said, and we watched him. He said, well, I just give myself a shot. And we watched him give himself a shot. And what he did was he punched the needle with the insulin through his blue jeans into his leg.
Oh.
And we thought, Jesus Christ, we do not want to come back here for your funeral. But that's what he was looking at. So these are things that happen. But we can, there are ways of dealing with it. Diabetes is one of the fastest growing diseases in the developing world. China has approximately twice as many diabetics as the United States.
Wow.
Now it has much larger population, so the percentage isn't there, but it's growing extremely fast as they change their lifestyle. India has about 43 million diabetics. So it's not dying. I mean, Indians, it's a mostly Hindu country, and their diet tends to be more vegetarian to vegan in nature. There are Muslims, there are a lot of Christians in India. No, they do, but they will eat lamb and that sort of thing, but they won't eat beef. Pakistanis will eat beef, but not the Indians, not the Indian Muslims. But it's a world, it's an epidemic around the world, and it's just getting worse. And you probably in your medical practice will see diabetics. wherever you're working. Whether if you're in a pharmacy, you'll be dispensing the biguanides and the other drugs, the thiouracils and others that we use to treat diabetes. You'll dispense those. You'll dispense the insulin. You'll sell syringes. You'll do a lot of things. And we're seeing more and more people developing diabetes as they get older, because probably as much as anything else, dietary and lifestyle.
And over 2 million people die from diabetes every year, not knowing that.
Yeah, that's another major factor. There is an estimate that about half of diabetes goes undetected. Now, that's an estimate. If half is going, if we can't detect it, we don't really know how many, but we're guessing from a lot of different other sources that about half the diabetes is undetected. Hypoglycemia is just low sugar. It's when you need to have, when you haven't eaten. In the mornings, you tend to be hypoglycemic because you've been fasting overnight, generally. And so you get up. That's one of the reasons that everybody used to get up and have a glass of orange juice first thing. That's what I did when I was a kid. We had a glass of orange juice first thing. We got up in the morning. It wasn't orange juice, it was tomato juice. Whatever it was, it had sugar.
Yeah.
Readily available sugar.
So what about people who are dying?
Well, hypoglycemia, there are some natural conditions that can result in people that just naturally are low in blood sugar. But usually when it's hypoglycemia, we're concerned about their processing of sugar in the body, which means pancreatic function, which means either glucagon or diabetes or insulin. Okay. A lot of people think of insulin type 2, the non-insulin dependent, or diabetes type 2, the non-insulin dependent diabetes, as insulin resistance. I've had some people insist that it's all about being resistant to your own insulin. I don't know why they think that's important. The important thing is that you're not processing sugar properly.
So
You
you
know.
need to be treated.
So you need to either change your diet,
Yeah.
because type 2 diabetes has a big dietary control function to it, or take the drugs. And the drugs have side effects. Some of them are nasty. My brother-in-law was a big man, probably 200, 210, lost 50 pounds in 6 months. Our first thought was cancer, of course. He was not talking. I finally called him up and said, "You better start talking to me." And it turned out that's when I found out he was a type 2 diabetic. He had never told us that, ever. And he said, "Well, I've been taking this drug. It was metformin. And what metformin did to him was it made his food taste like feces.
Ooh.
All of it. He couldn't eat." And I said, "Go to your doctor. Have you told this to your doctor?" "Well, sort of, yeah." "And he's not giving you a different drug?" And I said, "You go to the doctor and you tell him different drug or different doctor, your choice." So then he got switched over to a different drug, one of the gliptins, and he's doing fine. He can taste again and started to gain weight. But it aged him 10 years in 6 months. He now sounds like an old man. He is a year older than me. And he sounds like he's about in his mid-80s in his voice and everything because of that.
Yeah, I just asked about the
Mhm.
Mel's youngest daughter. We were having problems. They switched the scheduling at the school, and she was getting her snack like way later in the morning. But she's always eaten a full breakfast. She's our big eater. She's the only one that eats with no complaint. But she was getting dizzy and stuff.
Is she real slim?
She is.
Okay. She might have a gut motility issue. She might be flushing food through so fast that it's not absorbing. Our younger daughter's like that. She is this big around
Yeah.
And she, I mean,
Well,
literally,
that's all of Melody's.
yeah, well, she literally, we think she must flush things through because she
Yeah.
too, if she doesn't eat, she gets faint.
Well,
So-
and see, Maddie has